Welcome to the Sci-Fi Codes channel. Have fun listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe. With the subscribe button, Chapter 1, The Awakening. Jeffrey's first conscious thought was that he wasn't on Earth anymore. His second was that the floor he was lying on was inexplicably cold. Groaning, he blinked his eyes open, attempting to regain his bearings. The room around him was dimly lit, its metallic walls reflecting a soft, eerie glow. The air was tinged with an unusual scent, something faintly like lavender mixed with burnt toast, that seemed both soothing and unsettling. He sat up slowly, his mind still struggling to piece together the events that led him here. The last thing he remembered was his car sputtering and stalling on the highway, followed by a blinding light. Now he found himself in a strange, unfamiliar environment. "Great," Jeffrey muttered, rubbing his aching head. The throbbing pain was a stark reminder of how disoriented he felt. He glanced around the room, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The metallic walls had a sleek, futuristic design, adorned with strange symbols and controls he didn't recognize. A low hum resonated through the floor, adding to the sense of unease. "Ah, you're awake," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was smooth and commanding, with a hint of danger that made Jeffrey's heart skip a beat. The voice seemed to come from above, causing him to instinctively sit up straighter. Looking up, Jeffrey saw a tall, blue-skinned woman standing over him. She exuded an air of authority and regality, as though the universe itself should bow to her will. Her ginger hair peeked out from beneath a captain's hat, and she wore a dark blue leather uniform with sharp, angular designs that seemed both intimidating and sophisticated. Her vivid eyes studied him with an almost predatory curiosity. "Where am I?" Jeffrey asked, his voice shaky as he backed away slightly. His heart pounded in his chest, and he tried to steady his breathing. "You are aboard the Gara, my ship," the woman replied smoothly, crossing her arms in a way that seemed both confident and imposing. "I am Captain V of the Karari people." "Karari," Jeffrey repeated, his mind racing. He had never heard of the Karari before, and the notion of being abducted by aliens was beyond anything he could have imagined. Captain V's gaze swept over him again, this time with a more evaluative scrutiny. Jeffrey suddenly realized he was clad only in his boxers, and scrambled to cover himself, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. Captain V raised an eyebrow but said nothing, her expression inscrutable. "You are a peculiar specimen," she said, her lips curving into a sly smirk. "Not particularly strong or imposing, but perhaps useful in other ways." Jeffrey gulped, feeling a shiver run down his spine. The way she spoke about him as if he were an object of interest, rather than a person, made him feel like prey. He tried to stand but wobbled unsteadily, his body adjusting to the artificial gravity, which felt different from what he was used to. "Why did you pick me up?" he asked, struggling to maintain his composure. "Pick you up?" Captain V's smirk deepened. "You make it sound as if I found you at some cosmic tavern. No, human, you were intercepted. Your planet, Earth as you call it, has been monitored for cycles. We're always curious when a civilization achieves basic spacefaring capabilities." She gestured toward a large window, revealing the breathtaking vastness of space beyond. Stars, nebulae, and distant galaxies swirled in an otherworldly dance. "You were unfortunate enough to be noticed." "Unfortunate," Jeffrey muttered, feeling a pang of frustration. "Great. Out of 7 billion people, I'm the unlucky one who gets beamed up like some bad sci-fi movie." Captain V's voice softened slightly, taking on a more seductive tone. "Though I must admit, there is something intriguing about you. Humans are rare out here in the Hoven Quadrant." Jeffrey blinked, processing her words. "You're intrigued by me?" Captain V stepped closer, her imposing height making Jeffrey feel small in comparison. "I've always had a curiosity about primitive species, the way they think, how they respond to stimuli. You might say it's a hobby of mine." Was she flirting with him? Jeffrey's mind struggled to keep pace. He wasn't used to gorgeous alien captains being so suggestive. His most recent date had involved a bowl of instant noodles while watching reruns of Firefly. "Captain," an intercom crackled, breaking the tense atmosphere. "We are approaching the Von Belt, awaiting your orders." Captain V's expression shifted to one of focus and determination. "I will deal with this later," she murmured, giving him a final lingering look before turning and striding out of the room. Jeffrey sank back down, letting out a relieved breath. The strangeness of the situation was almost too much to handle. Chapter 2. Exploring the Gara. The next day, or what passed for a day on the spaceship, Jeffrey found himself wandering through the Gara under the guise of a guest. The ship was vast, its sleek corridors filled with alien technology that both fascinated and intimidated him. The walls were lined with strange symbols and glowing panels, and the blue-hued crew members moved with a practiced efficiency. Jeffrey tried to get his bearings, but the ship's layout was bewildering. The corridors seemed to twist and turn, leading him through a maze of unfamiliar spaces. The crew, with their blue skin and otherworldly features, gave him curious glances but otherwise ignored him. Despite their indifference, Jeffrey couldn't shake the feeling of being scrutinized. It was clear that Captain V's interest in him was not shared by the rest of the crew. They went about their duties with a sense of purpose, their eyes rarely meeting his. Captain V, or Vika, as he had learned her name was, seemed to make it a point to check on him frequently. Each time their paths crossed, the conversations delved deeper into personal territory. Her curiosity extended beyond mere scientific interest, and Jeffrey couldn't help but feel that there was more to her interest than she let on. During one of their encounters, they found themselves in the ship's mess hall, a spacious area with large windows that offered a view of the stars. Vika leaned casually against a counter, her posture relaxed yet commanding. "You know," she said, her voice contemplative, "humans have a certain charm, a raw, untamed nature." Jeffrey chuckled nervously, trying to mask his unease. "I'm not exactly raw and untamed. I work as a sales representative for a company that sells printer ink, not exactly space pirate material." Vika's violet eyes gleamed with amusement and something else, an intensity that made Jeffrey's pulse quicken. "I think you underestimate your appeal, Jeffrey." Her proximity was unsettling, and Jeffrey felt a flutter of anxiety mixed with excitement. "I still don't understand why you're so interested in me. I'm just, well, human." Vika's smile widened, revealing a hint of sharp teeth. "That's precisely it. Humans are unpredictable, full of surprises. It's alluring." Her hand drifted to his chest, tracing the outline of his collarbone with a delicate finger. Jeffrey swallowed hard, his heart racing as the cold air of the ship contrasted sharply with the warmth of her touch. Before their moment could develop further, the blare of alarms erupted throughout the ship. Vika's expression hardened instantly as she tapped her communicator. "Report, Captain. We're under attack. VCO raiders have breached our outer shields." Vika's gaze snapped back to Jeffrey. "Stay here." Without waiting for a response, she turned and dashed toward the command deck. Jeffrey hesitated for a moment, then followed the sound of chaos to the control room. The ship shook violently from the impact of enemy fire, and the crew scrambled over controls, their faces a mix of concentration and urgency. Outside the window, smaller enemy ships darted around the Gara, firing pulses of green light. The crew's movements were synchronized, their actions fluid as they engaged the ship's weapons and fired back at the attackers. Vika's voice cut through the din of battle. "Fire the torpedoes! Target their propulsion systems!" Jeffrey stood in the doorway, his heart pounding as the ship rocked from another hit. The scene was a whirlwind of activity, the crew working with a precision that left him in awe. Vika glanced over at him, her eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here? I told you to stay put." "I thought I could—" Another explosion interrupted him, throwing him off balance. He stumbled forward, nearly falling to the floor, but managed to catch himself. Vika rushed over, grabbing him by the arm with surprising strength. You're in the way," she growled, though there was a strange warmth in her tone. She didn't release his arm. "Come with me." Vika led him through the chaos to a secondary control room, where the sounds of battle were muffled but still present. The ship groaned with each hit, but Vika's demeanor remained composed. "Do you enjoy getting yourself into trouble, or is it just a human thing?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I think it's a me thing," Jeffrey replied, rubbing the back of his neck. Vika smirked, and for a moment, the tension between them felt more like a charged wire than the result of a space battle. Their proximity was electric, and Jeffrey felt a pull toward her that he couldn't ignore. "You're not like the others I've met, Jeffrey." "Oh?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Vika's violet eyes shone with something that looked a lot like hunger. "You've got spirit. You're not afraid even when you should be." Before he could respond, Vika moved closer, her body almost pressing against his. The air between them crackled with undeniable tension, and Jeffrey found himself leaning in, drawn to her magnetic presence. "You drive me to madness," Vika whispered, her breath hot against his skin. Her lips were inches from his, and the heat of her body through the cold metal of her uniform was palpable. "Maybe that's what you need," Jeffrey murmured, his voice thick with desire. He slid his hand to her waist, pulling her closer. Vika's growl was soft but filled with intensity. In one swift motion, she captured his lips with hers. The kiss was fierce, raw, and electrifying. Jeffrey felt his knees go weak as her hands gripped his shoulders, pulling him deeper into her embrace. Their kiss was a whirlwind of passion, their bodies pressed together in a way that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. The cold metal of the ship's walls was a sharp contrast to the heat of their bodies as they gave in to their primal desires. Chapter 3. The Aftermath. The heated embrace in the secluded alcove seemed to last for hours, though it was likely only minutes. As their breaths began to steady, Vika leaned against Jeffrey, her usually composed demeanor softened by the intensity of the moment. The battle outside continued, but in the safety of their hidden alcove, it felt as if the rest of the universe had faded away. Jeffrey still struggled to catch his breath, his mind racing as he tried to process what had just happened. Vika's violet eyes, now soft with satisfaction, met his with an expression that conveyed a mix of emotions: satisfaction, desire, and something more. "You've proven more resilient than expected, human," Vika said, her voice huskier than usual. Jeffrey managed a shaky chuckle, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "I guess I'm full of surprises." They stood in silence for a moment, the distant hum of the ship and the faint echo of the battle barely reaching them. In this quiet space, it felt as though something fundamental had shifted between them, something deeper than mere physical attraction. Vika tilted her head, studying him with a thoughtful expression. "Perhaps," she said softly, "I won't be so quick to let you go after all." The shift in their dynamic was palpable. What had begun as a mere curiosity seemed to have evolved into something more complex and profound. As the ship continued its journey, the nature of their connection became increasingly evident. Over the next few days, Jeffrey's interactions with Vika grew more frequent and intimate. The initial fascination seemed to have blossomed into a deeper connection, with each encounter revealing new facets of their personalities. Their conversations often delved into personal territory, and the chemistry between them became undeniable. One evening, as they shared a quiet meal in the mess hall, Vika's demeanor was unusually relaxed. The room was softly illuminated, and the stars outside the window created a serene backdrop. "You know," Vika said, her voice contemplative, "the universe is a vast and mysterious place. Sometimes it's the unpredictable elements that make it truly fascinating." Jeffrey looked up, meeting her gaze. "I never imagined I'd be part of something so extraordinary." Vika's smile was tender, her hand reaching out to touch his. "And yet, here you are. It seems the universe has its own plans for us." Their moments together had evolved from mere curiosity to something more personal. The boundaries between them had blurred, and their connection deepened with each passing day. As they stood together in the mess hall, Vika's hand found its way to Jeffrey's, their fingers entwining in a gesture of connection. "There's so much more to discover," she said softly, "both about the universe and about ourselves." Jeffrey nodded, feeling a sense of anticipation for the future. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." With a final lingering look at the stars, Vika and Jeffrey turned back toward the ship, ready to face the unknown together. The journey ahead promised new adventures, deeper connections, and the possibility of discovering what lay beyond the edges of their understanding. Before proceeding, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Chapter 4. Uncharted Territories. The days continued to blend into one another as the Gara traveled through the vast expanse of space. Jeffrey's presence aboard the ship had become a subject of frequent discussion among the crew, and Vika's interest in him remained a focal point of curiosity. One day, as the ship approached a new destination, Vika invited Jeffrey to a viewing platform. The room was lined with large windows, offering a panoramic view of the surrounding cosmos. Stars, nebulae, and distant galaxies painted a breathtaking tableau. "Look at that," Vika said, her voice filled with awe. "The universe is full of wonders, each more breathtaking than the last." Jeffrey gazed out at the cosmic panorama, feeling a sense of wonder and insignificance. "It's incredible. I never imagined I'd see something like this. Vika's gaze shifted to him, her expression softening. And yet, here you are. Sometimes it's the unexpected journeys that reveal the most about us. Their connection had become more profound with each passing day. The boundaries between them had blurred, moving from mere curiosity to something more personal and intimate. Jeffrey felt a growing sense of anticipation and excitement about the future. As they stood together in the viewing platform, Vika's hand found its way to Jeffrey's, their fingers entwining in a gesture of connection. "There's so much more to discover," she said softly, "both about the universe and about ourselves." Jeffrey nodded, feeling a sense of anticipation for the future. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." Vika's smile was tinged with both warmth and mystery. "We're about to embark on a new chapter in our journey. Who knows what we'll find?" The ship continued its voyage, the stars outside serving as a constant reminder of the vast, uncharted territories that lay ahead. As Vika and Jeffrey looked toward the future, they knew that their journey was far from over. The universe was full of mysteries and adventures, and they were determined to explore them together. Chapter 5. The Inner Conflict. As the Gara sailed through the cosmos, Jeffrey found himself increasingly integrated into the daily routines of the ship. Though he was still technically a prisoner, Vika had ensured that he was treated with a degree of freedom and respect. The crew's initial curiosity had transformed into a more accepting attitude, and Jeffrey had begun to feel like a part of the ship's community. However, the deeper connection he shared with Vika began to stir conflicting emotions within him. Their interactions had become more frequent and intense, and the line between curiosity and affection had become increasingly blurred. Jeffrey couldn't help but question the nature of their relationship, whether it was genuine or merely a product of their unusual circumstances. One evening, as the ship floated through a particularly serene section of space, Vika invited Jeffrey to her quarters for a private dinner. The room was elegantly decorated, with soft lighting and comfortable seating that provided a stark contrast to the rest of the ship's utilitarian design. As they shared a meal, Vika's demeanor was relaxed, her usual commanding presence softened by the intimate setting. The conversation flowed easily, and Jeffrey found himself opening up about his life on Earth, his hopes and his fears. "You know," Vika said, her voice thoughtful, "I've always been fascinated by the way different species perceive their place in the universe. Humans, in particular, have such a unique perspective." Jeffrey looked at her, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Vika smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the room. "Humans are driven by a sense of purpose, a desire to explore and understand. It's a quality that resonates with me, especially given my own experiences." The conversation took a more personal turn, with Vika sharing stories about her own journey and the challenges she had faced. Jeffrey listened intently, feeling a growing sense of empathy and connection. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere between them became charged with an undeniable tension. The boundaries that had once seemed so clear were now obscured by the intimacy they had shared. Jeffrey's emotions were a mix of excitement, confusion, and longing. Vika's gaze met his, her expression softening. "I know this situation is unconventional, and it's not easy to navigate, but there's something between us that feels real, despite the circumstances." Jeffrey's heart raced as he considered her words. "I feel it too, but it's hard to know what it means in the context of everything that's happening." Vika reached out, her hand brushing against his. "Sometimes the best way to understand something is to embrace it and see where it leads." As they sat together in the quiet of her quarters, the universe outside seemed to hold its breath. The connection between them was palpable, and Jeffrey couldn't deny the depth of his feelings. The journey ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, he felt a sense of clarity and resolve. Their relationship had evolved beyond mere curiosity, and the future was filled with possibilities. As they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, Jeffrey and Vika knew that their bond was a powerful force that would guide them through the unknown. Chapter 6. The Turning Point. The journey continued, and the Gara ventured into new and uncharted territories. The ship's crew carried out their duties with precision, and Jeffrey's integration into their daily lives became more seamless. His interactions with Vika remained a source of both fascination and intensity. One day, the ship's sensors detected a distress signal from a nearby system. The crew's mood shifted from routine to urgency as they prepared to investigate the source of the signal. Vika, with her usual authority, directed the crew to ready the ship for a potential rescue mission. Jeffrey, who had grown accustomed to the unpredictable nature of life aboard the Gara, felt a surge of excitement and concern. The prospect of a new adventure was thrilling, but the potential dangers also weighed heavily on his mind. As the ship approached the source of the distress signal, Vika summoned Jeffrey to the command deck. The atmosphere was tense, and the crew worked diligently to analyze the situation. "We've located the source of the signal," Vika said, her voice calm yet determined. "It's coming from a small uncharted planet. We need to investigate and assess the situation." Jeffrey nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension. "What do you expect to find?" Vika's gaze was focused on the planet ahead. "It's hard to say. The signal is faint, but it indicates a level of technology that could be advanced or primitive. We need to be prepared for anything." The ship descended toward the planet's surface, navigating through a thick atmosphere of swirling clouds and turbulent winds. The view from the window was both mesmerizing and foreboding. As the Gara touched down on the planet's surface, the crew prepared for an exploration mission. Vika, accompanied by a small team, led the way as they disembarked from the ship. Jeffrey, though not a part of the official team, felt a strong urge to accompany them. He couldn't ignore the feeling that this mission might hold significance for him and Vika. With Vika's permission, Jeffrey joined the exploration team as they ventured into the unknown terrain. The landscape was a striking contrast to the familiar environments of the ship. Strange vegetation and unusual rock formations created an alien but fascinating environment. As they navigated through the terrain, the distress signal grew stronger, leading them to a concealed facility partially buried beneath the planet's surface. The facility appeared to be a relic of an advanced civilization, its technology a mix of both ancient and futuristic elements. Inside the facility, the team discovered a group of survivors, inhabitants of the planet who had been stranded after a catastrophic event. The survivors were a diverse group, their appearance and technology indicating a rich and complex history. The encounter was both emotional and enlightening. Vika and her team worked to provide assistance and establish communication with the survivors. Jeffrey observed the interactions with a growing sense of admiration for Vika's leadership and empathy. As the mission progressed, Jeffrey found himself increasingly drawn to Vika, both professionally and personally. The experiences they shared on this mission deepened their bond and provided clarity about their relationship. One evening, after the survivors were safely on their way and the mission was nearly complete, Vika and Jeffrey found themselves alone in a quiet corner of the facility. The atmosphere was reflective and intimate, their earlier excitement replaced by a sense of profound connection. "You've been incredible throughout this mission," Vika said, her voice sincere. "Your presence and support have meant more to me than you know." Jeffrey smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've shown me a side of the universe that I never knew existed." Vika's eyes met his, her expression soft and contemplative. "The journey we've shared has been extraordinary. I'm grateful for the unexpected twists and turns that have brought us closer." Their connection had evolved into something more than either of them had anticipated. The mission had served as a turning point, clarifying their feelings and the future they envisioned together. As they prepared to return to the Gara, Vika took Jeffrey's hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. "Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it together. The universe is vast, but with you by my side, I feel ready for anything." Jeffrey squeezed her hand, feeling a profound sense of unity and purpose. "I'm ready too. Let's continue this journey together." With their bond solidified and their path ahead clear, Vika and Jeffrey prepared to embark on the next chapter of their adventure. The universe awaited, and together they were ready to explore its mysteries and face whatever challenges came their way. If you enjoy this video, then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell.